You have been sending foreign aid to parts of the world that are richer than parts of the UK. British taxpayers have funded anti-congestion measures in Kuala Lumpur, flood prevention in Mexico City and an all-female Chinese opera in Shanghai. Kuala Lumpur is home to the second tallest building in the world, the Merdeka 118. That cost $1.5 billion to build. They have got their own money over there. Some of the stuff you've been paying for is absolute guff. You have spent £202,000 helping to foster dialogue among local craftsmen in Shenzhen province in China. That's according to research by the Institute of Economic Affairs. Another 200 grand has been splashed on fostering creative citizens in China through co-design and public makerspaces. What the heck does that even mean? For context, some of these places have the same GDP per capita as places like Swansea or Walsall. Do you not think that maybe taxpayers in those areas might prefer the cash themselves? China has sent a robotic craft to Mars, and yet we're still sending them foreign aid, while pensioners in Britain are now coming to terms with the fact that they might not be able to heat their own homes this winter. Now, apparently, in 2022, we sent £353 million to the Taliban stronghold of Afghanistan. How's that going? Lovely stuff. As far as I can tell, there are two main points behind foreign aid. Firstly, soft power. Well, again, how's that going? The Taliban hate us, and China are eyeing up an invasion of Taiwan. In fact, outgoing US President Joe Biden secretly upped America's preparedness for nuclear war after China added 90 nuclear warheads in 1 year last year to take its total arsenal of world-destroying weapons to 500. Please tell me again why they need our money. The other aspect of foreign aid is stopping people fleeing their own countries to come here and be refugees or asylum seekers. How is Calais doing? Yeah, it's not happening, is it? In the past, we've given money to an Ethiopian girl band called Yegna. We gave millions to Kenyan rainmakers. But that was in the past, OK? We have to look at what we're doing now. And I wonder whether, at a time when hard-working Brits are really struggling and our new Labour government has just borrowed £3.1 billion more than expected to help fund public sector pay rises, is it really OK to be sending so much money abroad for highly dubious projects? Let's get our thoughts from our panel now. I am joined by the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I have also got political consultant Suzanne Evans and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Mark, I'll start with you on this. Why on earth are taxpayers in places like Walsall and Swansea sending money to fund an all-female opera in Shanghai or wherever it was?
It's a very good question, Patrick, to which I don't have a very satisfactory answer. It is a colossal waste of money. I think, to add to your monologue at the start, there is a third potential call on foreign aid, and that's if there's a one-off humanitarian disaster.
Yes.
You know, some ghastly flooding somewhere or whatever, and we're the only people, or we're some of the only people who can get in food and running water and the rest of it. But this is a disaster. It's often been said that foreign aid budgets are a way of taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries. And that seems to be the evidence of some of these schemes here. One note of caution, however, although I would end this madness, I was looking into the amount of money we've given China. It has fallen. I think it was 8 million last year. I don't think we should have given them a penny, but £8 million is only enough to keep the NHS going for slightly less than 20 minutes. So let's not pretend if we killed all this off, we've balanced the budget.
I completely understand that, but £8 million might go quite a long way in Redbridge, for example.
Yeah,
and that's kind of my
absolutely. And China, why are we sending any money to China? It's one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. They've got $300 billion in UK gilts. They've got $900 billion in UK Treasury bonds. They're one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. There's absolutely no need for that. And Mark's absolutely right. You know, none of us wants to take any money away from emergency aid, from immunisation programmes, things like that. But the fact is that only accounts for about a fifth of the foreign aid budget. The other thing that needs to be remembered is up to 50% of this foreign aid goes in administration, it goes in governance, it goes to even non-governmental organisations who are actively working against the kind of political achievements of our own country. It's an absolute nonsense. We absolutely must keep emergency aid going, supporting some of the poorest people in the world. But the fact is, and the other thing that I think I find really upsetting, is that it's not made any difference to their quality of life. So you look at countries like Pakistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, they get a huge whack of the foreign aid budget, but it's done nothing to improve their GDP per capita at all.
This is the other aspect to it. And look, I think, like many people, I would be a lot more sympathetic to it, Rebecca, if I could point at something and go, that's absolutely 100% going in the right place. But it feels a bit, to me anyway, and I think it feels a lot like it to lots of people, which is like there's this arbitrary pot of money and that just has to go. And we end up doing things like trying to fund AI-infused pollution repellents in Kuala Lumpur. When do we really need to do that? And I find that quite a hard sell for the British public when we could keep that money at home.
The main problem, I think, is the comms issue. So the way that this is delivered makes people feel really angry. And I understand why, because it's one of those things that does really well on Twitter and on Facebook and on social media, because it sounds awful. When you say people in this country are starving and we're sending millions of pounds to rich people in China, it does sound terrible, I understand that. But there is more to it. So one of the things that I didn't realise until quite recently is that the way that they calculate the money that goes there is not, you don't get a cheque. You don't get, money. It's not a wire transfer. That is how it's calculated by services. So in Afghanistan, 2022, Afghanistan was the main beneficiary, 352 million. That includes the army being there and the army coming out. It includes all those dogs that Gary Johnson made Boris put on helicopters. It's actually, that might have been charities, that might be unfair. Right. But it's a much wider amount of money, not just being given money for nothing. And the other thing is, it's a bit cruel to cherry-pick the worst of the worst. The Chinese opera, for instance, I believe, though I need to double-check this, one of the major capabilities for foreign aid that we've been encouraged to explore is female education. So across the world, girls can't go to school, they can't learn to read. That's obviously a very significant problem. We, as a country, as a good country full of good people, want women to learn to read and go to school.
What are we getting out of it for China? Why can't China do it themselves? They just put something on Mars.
I don't think anybody is suggesting this is perfectly run, and absolutely countries should have to be more accountable. We need to do a better job both on how we spend, how that money is given, but also how it's reported, because at the moment I can completely see that this sounds dreadful. In reality, it's actually us helping people across the world.
You say that, but we have had years of this stuff, was that 25 million quid towards Kenyan rainmakers to help meteorologists. With respect, meteorologists do not need help from Kenyan rainmakers, and we've paid for that. Why are we doing that? And there is a compare and contrast. At the moment, we've just seen a government, and this, by the way, is not Labour's fault, because this is stuff from the last year or so Labour have not been responsible for this now. However, I will caveat that by saying that one of the first things that Keir Starmer did was wanted to give £84 million to other countries to try to help stem the flow of people here. That we have no way, really, of keeping tabs on whether or not there will ever be money well spent.
Yeah, so here are two things to pick up a bit on what Suzanne and Rebecca have said. The first thing is, if you look through the historical data, there doesn't seem to be any correlation whatsoever with international aid going in and getting some of the desirable outcomes that Rebecca's speaking of.
So you don't think that Afghanistan and Ukraine were a good use of money?
Well, I'm talking about these educational projects.
You didn't say that.
Afghanistan was a catastrophic waste.
So you don't think that, for instance, women being able to leave Afghanistan to finish their medical degrees here was a useful or good thing?
You may be able to find individual cases.
OK, so you said there were none. It's not none.
No. These Chinese opera singers are doing well out of it. You'll be able to find individual cases. But if you're looking at the economy as a whole, no correlation at all between Western aid and economic growth. If you could show there was one, we've given a lot of money to country X year after year after year, and look at how bountiful it is 25 years later.
That's predominantly not why we do it. We do it for a humanitarian reason.
The second disastrous element, which Suzanne pointed to, this target of 0.7% is madly out of date, completely arbitrary, and means that there's pressures on officials to shuffle as much money out of the door as possible. We should be spending money on humanitarian projects on a case-by-case basis.
Well, that target isn't arbitrary. It's supposed to be
a UN arbitrary target.
And being in the UN is a fairly important and significant thing.
That target dates back to 1974.
I'm not saying it's a perfect number.
The whole economic world has changed since 1974. It is arbitrary and it's out of date, and it certainly.
But I don't think
anybody. If you really want to help
needs
these people, have more free trade with them. That's really what you mean.
Just to ask something, though, generally, I can understand that in the idea when times are plentiful and everything's going really well, that we might want to have more of a humanitarian look abroad. But right now in Britain, we've got some pensioners who are really worried about whether or not they're going to be able to turn the heating on this winter. Why should we really be doing any foreign humanitarian work when we've got that going on at home?
I don't personally feel that levels of poverty in some countries are comparable to levels of poverty here. Of course, I do not think that a pensioner should worry about heating ever in any country, but to me, a human is a human, and I don't feel I have more in common with them because I was born on the same landmass as they do, personally.
Right. But if they're paying the tax, that's the thing. Yeah. I get that. You know, you've got a worldview, fine, we differ on that. But if it's British taxpayers' money, does the British government not have a responsibility to put those taxpayers first?
There should be a way of doing both. It shouldn't be an either-or. And a lot of the ways that we do tax in this country, I don't think work particularly well anyway.
But Rebecca, you're just making the case for not having that fixed 0.7% of GNI. And Mark was, you know, they're pushing this out of the door. There have been circumstances when the civil servants responsible for spending this budget have been given huge bonuses just because they spend that money in time at the end of the financial year. It is obscene. There's no other way to say.
But I don't think anybody is arguing.
3 in 10 children in the UK live in poverty, so that's 4.
Absolutely, but even if you scrap foreign aid overnight, that would not disappear as a problem. The title of the debate is: should we stop sending foreign aid to countries like China and India? That would be getting rid. So if there's an earthquake, if there's a flood, no aid to these countries.
I think there should be humanitarian. But the truth is, Rebecca, it is an either-or. A decision which all politicians of all stripes always say they're making tough decisions. It's actually a straight mathematical decision, which is how do you spend the marginal pound? If you've got £1 million, how do you carve it up? And I think there's a case, Patrick, to actually say that foreign aid, other than in extreme humanitarian circumstances, should come out of any budget surplus that the government runs.
Specifically, the two most expensive things we did in 2022 were Ukraine and Afghanistan, both of which we would still have had to do under your system.
Well, I would put
the £200,000 that you talked about earlier, unfortunately, in real life terms, is nothing. To me, obviously, that's a life-changing amount of money. To a whole country, it's nothing.
Yeah, but we shouldn't slice it up that way. I mean, Afghanistan and Ukraine should have been Ministry of Defence expenditure, unambiguously.
It still comes out of the same pot, ultimately. It's just money we do or don't have.
That's a defence operation. This is aimed much more at
I think that's very much semantics at this point.
And humanitarian experiences, so I'll allow the MOD to function.
Fine. A lively start. And there's plenty more where that came from, because we do have a bumper show for you tonight.